Warning: the views and beliefs in the following program does not reflect the views of Boom Broadcasting. We give full creative control to our creators and do not believe in cancel culture. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey there, I'm Michael Davis, the man behind the mic. And as you know, with this podcast, this isn't about sports. This isn't about wrestling. We have a lot more content about that on Boom Broadcasting. This is about life. And this is one of the more vulnerable episodes that I am going to do. Compared to next week, it won't be as vulnerable. But yeah, today we are talking about something that everybody faces and doesn't really talk about, and that is rejection. Now, you can take rejection in so many different forms, so many different places. And I think in every area, people have faced rejection, and some know how to handle it probably a lot better than I do. And others just don't know where to go. And that's where I was a year ago. Now, you can talk about rejection in terms of, dating relationships. If you ask a girl out and you get shut down or, you know, that kind of stuff happens. That's not necessarily the rejection I'm talking about today. Even though that has happened, there was one time, asked a girl, 7th grade, and I was so young, right? Somebody's going to get me for this. I was so young. I'm like, yeah, let me ask her out on Facebook. And she said no. And that was the same night that the Dallas Cowboys played the New York Giants. Tony Romo broke his collarbone. That was 2010. And he was out for the rest of the year. So I learned my lesson. Don't ask a girl out. Uh, so that's a little bit of humor. Something about me, if I'm talking about something that's really close to my heart, sometimes I'll lighten it up with a little bit of humor. So that's the vibe of this episode. That's the vibe. So the rejection I am talking about is the stuff I think we, experience more as adults. There is that relationship rejection, but let's talk about jobs and job applications. Now the college applications I can't relate to necessarily because I went to a community college for 2 years, and the one school I wanted to go to was the next one was UNC Wilmington. Even though I was encouraged to do uh, UNC Chapel Hill, I would never ever wear that shade of blue for obvious reasons. But I was like, okay, I'll go to the community college and I'll apply to app. If I don't get into app, I'll apply somewhere else because I didn't want to spend all that money and all that effort and energy applying to like 8, 10 different schools and then obviously choosing my number one option. So I was like, okay, if I apply and get in, great. If not, I'll apply to Wilmington. If not, who knows after that. I was trying to stay in state as best as I could. But I got into app. I can't relate to the college application process. But what I can relate to is when college is over, applying to jobs. And my journey is, went to school in 2016, started working at the summer camp in 2017, which I'll come back to here in a few moments. And I went to school, and anytime I wasn't in school, I was at this camp working, putting everything I had into it, whether it was a weekend. COVID hit, obviously, that's when I graduated. But, that spring 2021, I was like, I don't want to be in my apartment. I don't want to be in my bedroom. I want to like be around people. Or if I can't be around people, I want to be around my favorite place. And I got that. I got both, and I ended up talking to the uh, conference and retreat director at the time. And before I could even get the question out, she's like, "Yes, absolutely, we'd love to have you." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, let me make sure all my classes are online first, because that would stink." Not, but all my classes were online. 2021, I moved into the camp pretty much year round, and They don't call you full time because then you gotta get, health insurance and benefits and this, that, and whatever. But you were basically full time. You were working a lot of hours in the week, especially if it was the weekends, especially especially if it was summer camp. And it was a great time because during 2021, I could finish up my classes online and I could work at the camp, and I had a job lined up for the summer working at the camp. So I was like, this is perfect. Like, this couldn't have worked out any better. Well, at the end of summer 21, I was like, well, I guess I'm here. Like, there's, you know, COVID still, people were weird about it. This was the phase where people were sort of getting out of it, but you'd still see, 78% of people wearing masks in the stores and everything. So it was tough to get a job anywhere, right? And so stay at the camp felt comfortable. I really felt like I was in my element. There was a part of me who, almost wanted to just do camp year round and, forego my broadcasting degree at Appalachian State University. And so there was a huge time in my life where I'm like, boom, broadcasting would never be a thing. Well, that was 21. I worked for the camp all the year and through the summer. Well, that spring, I'm approached by Brett. Hey, do you want to guest host my show? End up guest hosting his show. End up getting a spot at a sports station based out of Winston-Salem in the Triad area. That was a blessing. So I did that for 2 years. Um, so at this point, I'm still working at the camp, basically full time for, not that pay. And I'm doing this sports show on the side, gaining experience, gaining knowledge, but most importantly, just doing something I'm passionate about. And I feel like people can easily neglect what they're passionate about based on the season they're in. I've talked to so many people that are like, "Hey, once I got married and had kids, like I had to put away my passions." And I'm like, "Do you?" And I can't speak too much on that because I'm not in that season. But I feel like, especially talking to people who have been in that situation, are like, "Hey, I need to get my heart back. I need to get my passions back. I need to find what makes me me." Um, that's something I don't want to do when that season comes. But I'm working at the camp. I'm doing the sports show on the side, gaining experience, and fast forward. You do this for a year. Like, we're in 2023 now, and you always are like, hey, when can I leave camp? You always think the grass is greener on the other side. And the running joke at this camp was, yeah, this is my last summer. And then the very next summer you'd see them. Like, it never failed. I started saying it was my last summer in 2019, and I ended up working 2020, 2021, 22, and 23. I ended up working there 7 years total. So that was the running joke with me. I would always look at, hey, I'm going to get a job in the fall and I'll wrap up in December, start a new job in January. That way I'm not having serious FOMO when summer camp rolls around. That was like the idea in my head. That was the idea in my head. Well, what happens is, you just get busy. I mean, it's a year-round thing. You're just super busy, and anytime you're not working at the camp, you're just brain dead. You're exhausted. And I just wasn't applying for jobs in the fall. Like, I would get to the point where, especially back in 22, I got to the point where I'd apply to jobs, or I wouldn't even apply. I would, like, go through the whole process, but wouldn't hit the submit button because I would second guess myself. I was like, I don't wanna part of it was I don't wanna be rejected. Part of it was I'm comfortable here. Like, I like it here. I don't wanna leave. And then you fast forward to spring 2023, and I'm figuring out what my role is. I I had done this certain program assistant role for a couple years. I'm like, I don't want to do that again. Like, I want to do something different. And ended up coming up with this 24/7 online radio station. I was tasked with starting it from scratch, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Uh, Not one of my favorite summers, but one of my favorite jobs. And there is a difference. There is a difference. I'll talk more about my camp journey, but again, that's, me picking up another show for the sports station, actually picking up 2 more shows for the sports station. So I'm at 3 total, and then I'm producing a 24/7 online radio station at this camp, and they're also like, "Hey, you're our gopher. Anytime somebody needs to go to urgent care, anytime somebody needs to go pick up something in the store, it was this guy." So I was, like, doing a lot, and it was the end of the summer 2023, find out that, that would be my last summer. That was, you know, that was a tough situation, because I never thought it would end in the way that it did, and I'm grateful. But the day the day I found out, "Hey, this is your last summer," basically. The day after, I was, going to the doctor. I'm like, "Hey, I got this ear infection. I've been trying to self-medicate it for, like, 3 days, running myself in the ground, and can you check it out?" And she was like, yeah." And then a couple minutes later, she comes back and she's like, "Is COVID going around your camp?" And I'm like, I have no idea, but I really appreciate if you, checked out this ear. She's like, "Would you take a test for us?" I'm like, "Sure, but I feel fine." And sure enough, 10 minutes later, I am testing positive for COVID, and I'm like, "What the heck?" And now I gotta, like, self-quarantine, and you're just left in the walls of your room, and my rooms was kinda decorated, wasn't as decorated and as friendly as this. Definitely didn't have 2 TVs. Um, One of them kinda works, so it's really, like, 1.5. But it was like, man, like, I can't catch a break, like, I'm running around, running around, and then it's like, finding out indirectly, like, you're not gonna be here in the fall, and we're like, "Okay, well, now I gotta find somewhere to go, and I don't have any time to do it," and then the next day you get COVID. So, you got the time to find somewhere else, but you're just in a room by yourself, alone for a week. And then at the end of the week, you develop bronchitis, so you're out even longer. And it was just like, man, I cannot win. Like, that is one of the more darker times, for sure. Like, because here I am, I I can't do my job, so I don't have that energy release. I'm trapped in my room. People were nice enough, to bring me my to-go trays from the cafeteria, but I just can't win. I just can't win, and this whole time, I'm throwing out applications to anywhere and everywhere, like, ones I think I'm qualified for, ones I think I'm not, ones I think I'm overqualified for and just wouldn't be good enough. Went to a few job interviews, particularly one in Charlotte that I, like, walked away from, and I was like, "This isn't it." So, and that way I rejected them. That was a hard job to, turn down. It's Hey, before we go into, like, all the stuff I applied to and where I applied to, it's tough, like, when you have an offer on the table and your gut's just telling you no, but you have that job offer. Like, you could have walked away that day knowing, "Hey, I at least have a job," versus being unemployed. So, end up, like, just saying, "No, I don't think this is the right fit for me. I'm really sorry." Like, we were at the point of me about to sign my offer letter, and it was just I was like, I can't do it. Like, I don't know why, but this isn't it for me. So it was a time, and then of course didn't have a job lined up at that point when camp ended. So packed up everything. My last day was a Friday, packed up everything on a Saturday, and my best friend and his fiance and now wife came and helped. Super, super thankful for that. Super thankful for my parents and my little sister for helping. Super thankful for the guys who came in right before I left and just showered me with love and appreciation and gratitude. That was very, very helpful. Um, but I knew as soon as I, moved in temporarily with my grandmother that I had to get a job. I had to find something. And, you know, am I going to go to Charlotte? Am I going to find something here locally to where I could save up some money? That was a task. And when you're applying to jobs in North Carolina, in Charlotte, Wilmington, which is the exact opposite place where I'm at. Uh, if you're applying to jobs to the surrounding states like Tennessee, South Carolina, applying for jobs, that I just didn't, it'd been a dream. It would have been a dream. Like applying for a job in Florida, applying a job for Texas. You probably know that's probably sports oriented more than anything else. Applying for jobs in Connecticut, and if you know, that's more of a wrestling kind of deal there. I was applying anywhere and everywhere. I applied to my former community college in a role that I was basically uh, I was basically very close to during my time there. There were connections, right? And I don't even get an interview. I don't even get an interview. And there were places I got interviews that I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I'm just applying for a bunch of sales jobs, and I don't want to do that, especially the commission based ones. I just there were jobs I was applying to that I really wanted, but it was a long shot. Never heard back. There were jobs that I was qualified for that I was shocked I didn't get an interview for. There were jobs I was overqualified for that I just wasn't feeling it. And there was just so much self-doubt. There was so much anxiety about the whole process where I was like, "What's going on? Like, is there something wrong with my resume? Are there something wrong with my cover letters? Is there something wrong with my follow-up emails?" Which, just job interview one-on-one advice, I would make those requirements into any job you're applying to. Boom, boom, boom. And I still wouldn't get a reply, right? I mean, it was tough because it's like, why don't they want me? Why don't they want me? What about me is not good enough for them? Because there was something, like, I wasn't the ideal candidate walking through, or did I have too much experience and they didn't necessarily like that? Like, what was going on, and why was I not the guy? Why was I not the guy? Because I felt like I could be the guy. I learned how to do camp. And I had never been to a summer camp before, and I was one of the more valuable pieces, not in an arrogant, not in a confident or cocky way, but just I kn I was seasoned and I was a veteran, after those 7 summers. Those first 2 or 3, I was struggling. I think about the 3rd summer, I was getting the hang of it. Um, but I knew I could provide value to anywhere I went, and nobody was giving me a chance. And the ones who were giving me a chance, I couldn't do it for money purposes, like having to move to basically, work a job just to pay rent and not having anything else. I mean, these were the jobs that, were on the table, and I don't feel good about it. And so what helps me cope with this rejection? Because The the community college not offering me an interview definitely hurt. That hurt because I was more than qualified, and that is something I would have absolutely had a blast, enjoyed. And it's all about, it not if you know somebody, but if somebody knows you. And most of the people knew me there, which was like, okay, like, yeah, I know my name's a little bit different on the resume, but interview, right? Interview. Uh, what helped me go through this rejection is time. Uh, you can't equate anything else but time, right? And I thought this was going to be a shorter episode. I have a lot to do today. I have to do the Waffle House challenge as a fantasy football punishment. So uh, this this will be fun, right? I thought this was going to be a shorter episode, but we all go through rejection, and it's really tough. And in the moment in August when you're sitting still, like all you have to do is sit still and think about where your life's going to be in 5 years from now and 10 years from now, and where you're going to be in a month from now. And back when I was applying for jobs, I had no idea where I was going to be a month from then. I didn't know where I was going to be a week from then. And I will just say, almost as a precursor for next week, because next week is really, really close to my heart with how everything happened. Um, I didn't know that the rejection and all this stuff, I thought that was going to be the worst part, right? Until I get a job and everything works out. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. What happened was months down the road, I realized if I had gotten any job, then I would have been inserviceable for months. If I had moved away and was living by myself, um, I probably don't get help and I'm probably dead. Hopefully YouTube doesn't kill me for that. No pun intended. Um, there was just a path I didn't realize was there until looking back, and I'm like, I am so grateful that I'm not in Texas. I am so grateful that I'm not in Florida. I'm so grateful I'm not in Tennessee or South Carolina or Connecticut. I'm so glad I'm not in these places, because if I was, I wouldn't have had help, and I would have been miserable, or things would have been a lot worse for me. And that's nothing I could have seen. That is totally God. And I told you guys on the first episode, like, this isn't a shove Christianity down your throat kind of show, but this is hey, my faith is a big part of this. And without God knowing exactly what I needed for the fall, I would have messed up. And boom broadcasting doesn't exist. The man behind the mic is no longer behind the mic. It's it's dark and it's tough. And some of you know the story, some of you don't. But I do share that story next week, because a week from now is the 1 year anniversary of everything that happened and everything that changed my life. So it'll be a heavy episode. It'll be a heavy episode, but I can say this. If you are going through any type of rejection, time helps, but knowing that you're on the right path, even when it doesn't feel like it, is really worth it. It is really worth it. And before I go, I wanted to share a quote from a very philosophical, did I say that right? A philosophical person who had just a mind blowing quote 7 years ago from today. Facebook reminded me, and I quote, "Tomorrow is just another chapter. Don't get ahead of your place in the book. The next chapter will still be there when you get to it." And that philosophical person was me 7 years ago after my first summer at that camp. And I'm racking my head all morning about what in the world was I talking about? Uh, but 2017 Michael was very wise beyond his years. 2024 Michael, not so much. I don't know what happened, but it's true. Tomorrow's just another chapter. That's all it is. Don't get ahead of your place in the book. Read today's chapter. Okay. Read the chapter for today, and guess what? The next chapter will still be there when you get to it. So I know rejection brings a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry. And am I good enough? Are you think you're thinking about your self-worth? Just focus on today's chapter. After watching this episode, whether you watch this on Saturday when it dropped, whether you watch it on Sunday, whether you watch it later on in the week, whether you stumble across this years and years from now, what does your chapter today have for you? What do you need to read? What do you need to write? Because you can write your story. And I'm so excited to get to share with you guys what happens next week on the 1 year anniversary of everything happening, and how I'm still sitting here alive and well. And it's going to be an episode for real, no cap, as my buddy Johnny would say. I'm looking forward to sharing my story, but it's scary. It'll definitely be vulnerable, but I think I was vulnerable with you guys this episode. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Boom Broadcasting content from this past week. Everybody did a fantastic job, especially when I was away for a few days. We'll have good stuff lined up for you next week, and I can't wait to see you then. And this has been the man behind the mic.